I've never said that Brock Purdy was trash. What I did say is Brock Purdy is a game manager.
32 teams in the NFL, and there's not a lot of people that can come in and play the quarterback position well in the NFL. It's a hard job.
Less than 2 years ago, most NFL fans had never heard of Brock Purdy. Entering the league in 2022 out of Iowa State, Brock Purdy seemed destined to become most famous for being a Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the NFL draft. But the stars aligned for Purdy to become incredibly relevant, taking the reins on a 49ers team with championship aspirations but with a missing piece. Brock Purdy made such a strong impression as a rookie that he forced the organization to abandon an individual that they gave up 3 first-round picks for and make Brock Purdy their starter. Brock Purdy has rewarded the San Francisco 49ers for pivoting to him with an incredible season and a pair of thrilling playoff wins. Still, even with Brock Purdy's high level of success and meteoric rise, skeptics have discounted how much credit he should receive with good coaching and elite talent around him. But in this particular case, there is a chance for Purdy to silence critics once and for all. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we got all that out of the way, work! For the Super Bowl, PrizePicks is blessing us with an easy way to make $100. All Patrick Mahomes needs is 1 passing yard in the Super Bowl for a square to hit, which means he's pretty much a free square. First, download PrizePicks and use my promo code Mikerophone when you sign up to get up to $100 deposit match on your initial deposit, and then make these picks really quickly before they change the lines on them. So for me, I'm pairing Mahomes' free square with Isaiah Pacheco, who's had at least 1 touchdown in his last 5 games, so that's easy, and Christian McCaffrey, who has had more than 88.5 rushing yards in 4 of his last 5 games. Of course, I give away all my picks for free on Instagram, and I highly recommend you turn on notifications for my Instagram story so you can get the picks quickly before they move the lines and you lose your advantage. And thank you, PrizePicks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Even before entering the NFL, Brock Purdy had already made an indelible mark in Ames, Iowa. As a 4-year starter, Brock Purdy helped turn around an Iowa State program with a winning record in each season from 2018 to 2021. During his college career, Purdy threw for over 12,000 yards with 100 touchdowns in 48 games. He finished his career with the Cyclones as their all-time leader in passing yards and touchdown passes. By this point, he decided to declare for the 2022 NFL Draft, owning a strong claim as the greatest quarterback in Iowa State history. But even with a successful collegiate career, Purdy wasn't a highly regarded NFL prospect. Scouting reports applauded him for being a team leader with strong hands and an accurate passer, but others said that he possessed no elite traits, didn't improve after a breakout sophomore season, and didn't have a powerful arm. One team even explicitly stated that they had no interest in drafting him, citing his lack of size and athleticism. For a brief period of time, it looked like he might go undrafted altogether after everyone passed on him during the NFL Draft's first 2 days. But finally, at the end of the 7th round, San Francisco 49ers made Brock Purdy Mr. Irrelevant and selected him with the final pick in the NFL Draft, number 262. Just because he was drafted didn't mean he'd make the team. Only 9 quarterbacks were drafted in 2022. One of them was a first rounder. This is the fewest amount of QBs that were selected since 2015, a huge gap from the 14 quarterbacks that would get picked the year after. And Brock Purdy wasn't exactly expected to be the one in his draft class to break out. The San Francisco 49ers' recent drama at the position was a huge reason why. A month before the 2021 NFL Draft, San Francisco famously traded up from the 12th overall pick to get the 3rd overall pick from Miami. They also traded the Dolphins a 3rd round pick and 2 future first rounders to do so. The amount of draft capital the 49ers gave up strongly indicated that the 49ers would take a quarterback. Sure enough, San Francisco drafted Trey Lance with the 3rd overall pick in the NFL Draft to be their quarterback of the future. They did this despite already having Jimmy Garoppolo under center, who helped lead him to a Super Bowl appearance in the 2019 season, but who also had a history of injury issues. Trey Lance wouldn't start right away, and although he got a couple of opportunities to play as a rookie, Jimmy G started for most of the season. After a 10-7 regular season, Jimmy Garoppolo once again helped the 49ers get all the way to the NFC Championship after a pair of road playoff wins over the Dallas Cowboys and Green Bay Packers, but they once again again came up short on the Super Bowl's doorstep, losing by 3 to their division rival and eventual champion LA Rams. That offseason, Kyle Shanahan made it clear that this was now Trey Lance's team, while making their desire to trade Jimmy Garoppolo abundantly clear. The 49ers had just drafted Brock Purdy and signed Nate Sudfeld to a 1-year fully guaranteed $2 million deal. It seemed like those two would be competing to be Trey Lance's backup with Jimmy Garoppolo out of the picture. Both of them impressed the team in the preseason, but an unexpected development threw a wrench in their battle to be the backup. Shortly before the season, Jimmy Garoppolo agreed to restructure his contract after the 49ers couldn't find a trade partner, suddenly complicating Brock Purdy's chances of making the roster. NFL teams don't usually carry 4 quarterbacks on their roster, and either Brock Purdy or Nate Sudfeld would be the odd man out. And as it turned out, it would be Sudfeld, despite his guaranteed salary, meaning Brock Purdy had made the 53-man roster. But despite this remarkable achievement, Brock Purdy was still buried on the depth chart behind Jimmy Garoppolo, who was their solidified starter, and Trey Lance, who was finally ready to become the starter after the team gave up so much to draft him. After a disappointing loss in Week 1 to the Chicago Bears, Trey Lance went down with a brutal right ankle injury in Week 2 against Seattle. After he was carted off the field, Garoppolo came in to finish the game, a 20-point San Francisco 49ers win, but Trey Lance's season was over. He had season-ending ankle surgery, effectively reinstating Jimmy Garoppolo as the starter and elevating Brock Purdy to the backup spot. Jimmy Garoppolo would start in the Niners' next 10 games, most of them being wins, and posted a strong 16-4 touchdown to interception ratio during the season. But in Week 13 against the Miami Dolphins, Jimmy Garoppolo would get injured yet again. This time, he would go down with a foot injury and had to get carted to the locker room. In his first extended action of his career, Brock Purdy threw for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns as the San Francisco 49ers beat the Miami Dolphins 33-17. By the end of the day, news broke that Jimmy Garoppolo would be done for the season, a moment that would change the trajectory of the San Francisco 49ers forever. Since Kyle Shanahan became the Niners coach, they went from 42-19 with Garoppolo as the starter, including the playoffs. At that point, they had gone 9-29 with everyone else. Now they had Brock Purdy, a third-string rookie who was nearly undrafted and a relatively unknown player, taking control of an 8-4 team as the playoff race began to tighten in December. In his first career start against NFL legend and fellow late-round pick Tom Brady, Brock Purdy threw for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns while rushing for another touchdown as San Francisco blew the doors off of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 35-7, and the rest, as they say, was history. Purdy started the rest of the way, winning all 5 of his starts, helping the San Francisco 49ers end the season on a 10-game winning streak to finish 13-4 and easily win the division. He threw for multiple touchdown passes in each start, with his quarterback rating only dipping below 100 once. That carried right on over to the playoffs in a convincing win over the Seattle Seahawks in the wildcard round. Brock Purdy had a big game with 332 passing yards, 3 touchdown passes, and a rushing score in a victory. He was much less effective in the divisional round against the Dallas Cowboys in what ended up being a defensive slugfest. But Purdy did his job by not turning the ball over, and the offense did enough for the defense to carry them to a 19-12 win. The San Francisco 49ers were 7-0 overall with Purdy as their starter and rode a 12-game winning streak into the NFC Championship game, but disaster struck on the doorstep to the Super Bowl. Early in the first quarter against the Philadelphia Eagles, Brock Purdy took a hit from Hassan Reddick that ultimately resulted in a lost fumble upon review. More importantly, Brock Purdy had to leave the game before their 4th-string quarterback, Josh Johnson, was knocked out with a concussion. Brock Purdy attempted to return, but he couldn't throw, and the Philadelphia Eagles took down the San Francisco 49ers easily 31-7. The league would later implement a rule in an attempt to prevent another team from dealing with the same situation that San Francisco dealt with that day. It turns out that Brock Purdy tore his UCL, which would likely require surgery, keeping him out for 6 months. It was a disappointing end to an improbable run by Mr. Irrelevant, but the future looked bright for Brock Purdy, especially after the team publicly addressed their quarterback situation a few months later. In his season-ending press conference, Kyle Shanahan dismissed any chance of Garoppolo returning to the team, while firmly backing Trey Lance and Brock Purdy despite injuries to their young quarterbacks.
I know we have 2 starters on our team right now that I believe we can win with. So when you have that situation, that eager to go looking around.
Brock Purdy had surgery the next month, putting him on track to return in time for the start of the 2023 season. Although the 49ers finally moved on from Garoppolo when he signed with the Raiders, they still had to decide who would be their starting quarterback in the upcoming season. Trey Lance had been expected to become their long-term starter since the 49ers gave up all those picks to trade up for him, but Purdy played too well for the team to revert back to their original succession plan. In an August interview with Sports Illustrated, Kyle Shanahan had some revealing quotes about his belief in Brock Purdy. The most revealing being that Brock Purdy had clearly been their starter since the season ended, and it only took 3 games for him to realize that he was their best option at quarterback. At the end of the month, the San Francisco 49ers traded Trey Lance to the Dallas Cowboys for a 4th-round pick. After the move, Shanahan admitted that drafting Trey Lance was a mistake. If Lance hadn't been injured, Purdy went undrafted, or didn't play well down the stretch, he might have been given another chance to be the 49ers franchise QB. Instead, Trey Lance became a sunk cost, and like the real 49ers in the 1800s, San Francisco struck gold. Nobody began the 2023 season as hot as Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco scored at least 30 points in each of their first 5 games, while largely blowing out their opponents on their way to a 5-0 start. Purdy, who was 10-0 in the regular season to begin his career, scored a touchdown in each game and didn't throw an interception during that stretch. He had his first 300-yard regular season game with 2 touchdowns against the New York Giants, only threw 1 incompletion the next week against the Arizona Cardinals, and torched the Dallas Cowboys the week after with 4 touchdown passes. But the following month changed the narrative around the team, leading to questions about how good Purdy actually is. Against the Cleveland Browns' stingy defense, he completed less than half of his passes as the offense struggled all day. Purdy helped put the team in a position to win, but Jake Moody pushed the potential game-winning field goal far right, and the 49ers lost their first game of the season to PJ Walker and the Cleveland Browns. The next week on Monday Night Football, the offense was buoyed by 2 Christian McCaffrey touchdowns, but Purdy threw 2 fourth-quarter interceptions as they lost again 22-17. Against the Cincinnati Bengals, Purdy set career highs in passing and rushing yards, but had 2 more interceptions, including an abysmal red zone decision, and San Francisco lost by 2 touchdowns at home. As they entered their bye week, observers began to wonder how important Purdy actually was to the San Francisco 49ers. Was he actually a good quarterback, or was he propped up by elite talent? Not everyone gets to have Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Trent Williams, and an offensive genius in Kyle Shanahan helping them out. But Brock Purdy came out swinging after the bye. He helped extinguish the losing streak with a nearly perfect game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, then finished with a perfect quarterback rating the following week in a win over Tampa Bay. A couple weeks later, he helped demolish the Philadelphia Eagles with over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. He followed that up with a career-high 368 yards in a victory versus Seattle and 4 more touchdown passes against Arizona. Riding high off of a 6-game winning streak, the question now surrounding Purdy was that of a potential MVP. He had been putting up great numbers on a great team, but how much credit did he deserve with all the incredible talent around him? After all, his running back also warranted MVP conversation, not to mention that he was supported by one of the league's best defenses. The conversation seemed to change after their Christmas game against the Baltimore Ravens. Purdy had the worst game of his career, throwing 4 interceptions as Baltimore dominated the 49ers at home in a 33-19 loss. His MVP candidacy suddenly seemed laughable to fans, and even the NFL's YouTube channel danced on his supposed MVP grave. That performance also highlighted a massive anti-Purdy push against him winning MVP. Even though his overall performance warranted consideration, he had become the best topic for sports talk shows to argue about, with some claiming he should win MVP and others claiming he's only good because of the players around him. Regardless, Purdy and the Niners got back on track the following week, beating the hapless Washington Commanders and clinching the NFC's #1 seed. Purdy got the next 2 weeks off after resting during Week 18, gearing up for the divisional round against the Green Bay Packers. But outside of a long touchdown pass to George Kittle, Purdy and the 49ers offense looked bad and out of sorts as Green Bay took a 7-point lead into the 4th quarter. But Brock Purdy showed up when it counted the most, going 6 of 7 on the game-winning drive, including a big 9-yard scramble that helped set up Christian McCaffrey's go-ahead touchdown. As the Niners came back to win 24-21, it was the exact sort of game that makes Brock Purdy such a divisive figure in sports debates, but he'd get another chance to show what he was made of in the NFC Championship. Early on against the Detroit Lions, things looked bleak. Detroit stormed out of the gates with Purdy helping them out with a 2nd quarter interception. The Niners trailed 24-7 before working towards an unlikely comeback. A 51-yard completion to Brandon Ayuk off of a defender's face mask set up a Purdy touchdown strike to him 3 plays later. After the Lions fumbled on the next snap, San Francisco tied the game with a short McCaffrey touchdown. After taking the lead on their next drive with a field goal, Brock Purdy helped engineer a 70-yard drive capped off by a short Elijah Mitchell score. This would effectively put the game away and send the 49ers to the Super Bowl. But even after helping his team get to the biggest game, Brock Purdy still had vocal detractors. Former MVP Cam Newton labeled him as a game manager and called him the 10th best player on his team.
I've never said that Brock Purdy was trash. What I did say is Brock Purdy is a game manager. That's not hate. That's just what I feel to be facts. But I still reserve the right to say this. To be labeled a game changer, Brock Purdy has to be the best player on the offensive side of the ball. And that's not the case.
And who's the best player?
Christian McCaffrey. Man, look, I ain't recanting. And if you really want to just be honest, if you add in the defensive talent and you add in the offensive talent, Brock Purdy is the 10th best player on this team. Okay, cool. Did he have a great game? Yes. Is he been playing out of his mind? Yes. Is he a quarterback that's hot? Yes. But he's still the 10th best player on his team.
However, ahead of the Super Bowl, Brock Purdy said he didn't view the label as an insult.
It can be a compliment at times where it's like, all right, you got a guy that can come in and run the system well. I feel like that's a compliment. I think that's, you're doing things right mentally, and obviously you're good enough to be able to hit guys that are open and make plays. There's 32 teams in the NFL, and there's not a lot of people that can come in and play the quarterback position well in the NFL. It's a hard job. So if you're saying that I'm a game manager and I don't look flashy in how I do it, I mean, that's your opinion, that's okay. And at the end of the day, I want to do what it takes to help my team win.
Even with success, athletes will always face criticism, but Brock Purdy has faced a lot considering what he's accomplished. He mingled amongst the regular season league leaders, finishing 5th in passing yards, 3rd in touchdown passes, 4th in completion percentage, 1st in yards per attempt, and 1st in passer rating and QBR. He was named to the Pro Bowl and an MVP finalist, but his critics point out that the team around him has allowed him to reach these lofty heights in just his 2nd season. Christian McCaffrey was also named a finalist for MVP and Offensive Player of the Year, and the two were part of the 9 players on the team who made it to the Pro Bowl, while Kyle Shanahan was a finalist for Coach of the Year. There's no doubt that Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers have reached a high level of success this season. It's just a matter of who deserves the credit. Niners legend Joe Montana said on the Pat McAfee show that Purdy's handling of the talent around him is why they could win a Super Bowl.
I think if you look at the weapons that Brock's working with, he's figured that offense out. He understands what his position is. He knows when that chance will come and when he needs to do it, but in most cases, it's okay to punt. I got a pretty good defense too, and that's when we had the same thing.
Brock Purdy plays well and San Francisco wins, he'll still have detractors. They may point to Nick Foles as an example of who Brock Purdy really is, a system QB with elite talent around him to make him look good. He'll probably need to have a long career of success to truly silence those critics, and if he plays like he did against the Baltimore Ravens, those critics may never see him as anything other than a beneficiary of ideal circumstances. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you believe in the hype around Brock Purdy? Has he finally cemented himself in immortality with all he's accomplished? Or does he need to accomplish more for you to be a believer in him? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.